Day 2 of Chapter 2, Section 10 is about relative error, which is very similar to finding percent of change. They just use some different words. So vocab, relative error is the ratio of the absolute value of the difference of a measured or estimated value and an actual value compared to the actual value. So yesterday we did exactly the same thing, only with a new and original number. This time it's an estimated and actual value. This is what it's going to look like. Measured or estimated, okay, so this is what I say, measured minus actual in absolute value marks, so we should always get positive, divided by actual, and then we still need to multiply it by 100 so that we can get it as a percent. All right, a decorator estimates, that means that's their estimated value, it's not necessarily the actual value. That a rectangular rug is 5 feet by 8 feet. The rug is actually 4 feet by 8 feet. What is the percent error in the estimated area? Okay, so finding actual area of these places, 5 by 8 is 40, and 4 by 8 is 32. So when I figure out my measured, my measured or estimated would be that 40 square feet. And the actual was the 32 square feet. So now I'm just going to plug it in. 40 minus 32 in absolute value, so I get a positive number every time, even though I would have this time, divided by the actual, and then times 100. Okay, so I have 8 over 32 divided by, which is going to give me 0.2. And then times 100 tells me this is about 20%. We were off. It was a 20% error when this decorator estimated. She was off by about 20%. Okay, you estimate that your friend's little sister is about 7 years old. That's an estimate. So that is the M. And she's actually 9 years old, so the A is 9. So when I plug it in, I'm going to do 7 minus 9 in absolute value bars so that this becomes positive, divided by the actual amount of 9. So I get a 2. 7 minus 9 is negative 2, but the absolute value bars make it positive. 2 over 9, which if you remember is 0.2 repeating. And then I have to multiply that times 100, which moves my decimal 2 places. So I have about a 22% error. All right. Sometimes we don't know the actual measurements, like when we use a ruler, we're limited on how perfect we can be. So we measure to the nearest unit or part of a unit, like centimeters or quarter inches. And you're allowed to be off by a little bit, but the most that you're allowed to be off is half of whatever unit you're using. Okay, so for example, if you're rounding to the nearest whole amount, that means you get a half. Okay, so you can be higher by half, or you could be lower by a half. Okay, if you're measuring to the nearest half unit, so the nearest half inch or half foot, etc., you only get to be off by a quarter, because a quarter is half of your half. So you can be higher by a quarter or lower by a quarter. Okay, this would be really good to write in your notes. People forget this often. If you're measuring to the nearest tenth of your unit, half of a tenth is 0.05. So you can be up by 0.05 or you could be down by 0.05. Okay, keep this in mind when you move on and do the next couple questions, because it's easy to forget. All right, we're going to try, since you guys aren't in class with me, it'll be hard to do a couple of these things, but let's try this one. A student's height is measured as 66 inches to the nearest inch. Okay, that's a whole inch. What are the student's maximum and minimum possible heights? Okay, so for the maximum, we're going to add. For the minimum, we're going to subtract. Now we have to look at this and find out what we get to add and subtract. If I'm going to the nearest whole unit, that's this one, that means I get to add a half or subtract a half. So I'm going to take the 66 that they measured and add a half to get the maximum amount I'm allowed, which would be 66.5 inches. And for minimum, I take that 66 that we measured and subtract off a half an inch, and I get 65.5 inches. So this is all I'm allowed, otherwise it's not accurate enough. All right, so this one, since nobody's here with me, I measured my head. So the circumference of Mrs. W's head is 55 centimeters. If we measured to the nearest tenth of a centimeter, what are the minimum and maximum measurements possible? Okay, so remember, if I'm measuring to the nearest tenth, that's this third one at the bottom, I only get to add on 0.05 and subtract off 0.05. Okay, so for my maximum, I'm going to take the measurement that I got when I measured my head, and I'm going to add on 0.05, giving me 55.05 centimeters. And for my minimum allowed, I'm going to take my 55 that I measured and subtract off 0.05, which gets me 54.95 centimeters. There's my minimum and my maximum. All right. If you have any questions, make sure you find me. The rest of your assignment is on page 148.